Well, hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel live stream. How you guys doing today? I hope everybody's doing well. It's a beautiful rainy Saturday in Chicagoland, but it's a good day. It's a good day so far. I rested so far. I actually didn't do a lot of filming today, which is good, but I spent some time with the family. Actually, I take that back. I did do one filming. And I want to say something about that. You're going to see a video tomorrow from the channel that is you guys are gonna like it. It's a different video. It's a 1,000 subscriber milestone, and I'll show you a few things. Share a little bit of myself. So look forward for that. And one thing I will say before we get started, I am trying to ramp up my Instagram account, share with you some behind the scenes stuff and stuff from the shop that I can't really make a whole video about, like certain things I see and little stuff. So if you don't follow me after we're done with the live stream, it's the Car Care Nut on Instagram. So having said that, let's start with the questions. And YouTube have done it again. I noticed a couple questions that were there before we started the live stream, and now they're gone. I don't see them. So I actually took a screenshot of them. So let's start with actually the very first one. So Mike H says, wish I live near you so you could be my mechanic. Why choose a new Camry over an Accord? Do you trust turbocharged engines? Honestly, I don't have much experience with Hondas, especially the new ones, but they're good cars. They make good cars, just like Toyota does. However, the turbocharged thing, turbochargers have come a very long way, but they're still, at some point, they're going to give out, and unfortunately, that's the way they are. I own a turbocharged car, so it's not a Toyota, and I know at some point the turbo is going to go, and that's just the way it is with turbos. But I can't really tell you choosing a Camry over a Accord, which one is best. I think Camry is a great car. I don't know much about the Accord and the reliability. I don't like that every single new car now has turbochargers. I think Toyota is holding off, and I'm right there with them for holding off. That's a good idea. Having said that, there was another question that got taken out by Brian Lassane. I have a 2021 Toyota RAV4. There's a gas station that sells 92 octane, no ethanol gas. Is it worth spending the extra money? So whenever you have non-ethanol gas, it's always going to be better than any gasoline with ethanol. You're going to get better gas mileage. Yes, it might be more expensive, but it's actually better for the engine, better for all the components, and of course, better for gas mileage. So if you have the opportunity to do that, try it out, see how big is the difference in gas mileage. If you notice a big difference and it can justify the cost, yes, I would go for it. But if it's not really something you're noticing, it might not be worth it. I mean, yes, a little bit more protection for the components, but it's not something significant. Most of these cars are designed to run with some ethanol, like 10%, 15%, no more than that. But play it by ear, this one. I don't want you also overspending for nothing. It's not worth it just for the protection. If you can get some extra gas mileage, that would be nice. So Imad 2017 says, I tried to check the battery filter of my RAV4 Hybrid 2020. Got the screw out, but wasn't able to remove the cover with a screwdriver. I watched your video how to clean the filter. Any advice? So, unfortunately, that door, you're just going to have to hold it and kind of pull on it. Sometimes these clips get stuck. Even if the door breaks, it's not the end of the world. You can get a new one. But fortunately, sometimes they get stuck, and you kind of want to manhandle them a little bit. Just kind of pull on it hard in the direction that I told you to pull on it on the video. And then another question you asked is, what are the 5 tips to keep my RAV4 2020 running until 300,000 miles? Maintenance, and 5 times maintenance. Really, the biggest thing is maintenance, making sure you're doing everything on time. If you really want to, you have that goal in mind of that 300,000 miles, do an oil change every 5,000 miles for 6 months, change the transmission fluid every 60, keep the coolant replaced, check your fan filter, be on top of the maintenance. Most people just rely on the maintenance minder or a little sticker, and they tend to forget. You gotta be on top of the maintenance. Do it a little bit earlier is better. Don't try to do it earlier more than overdue. Most people will wait till that miles, then they start, okay, now let's get the oil, let's schedule the appointment, or whatever the case may be, and now you're over. It happens all the time, and it's okay if it happens here and there, but you want to be proactive about the maintenance and understand what is required. That's the biggest thing. And most people will be like, well, I don't know what my car needs. Well, it's all in your maintenance guide. So that's the first place you want to kind of memorize, understand what your car needs at what mileage interval. And if you're not sure what's what, and you go to a dealership and they give you what most people call the laundry list, just research each item they tell you, research it. Do you need it? I have a video series on how to maintain your Toyota. It's I think a 5 or 6 part series. Basically walks you through everything that a dealership will recommend to you, and then you can make a better judgment. Is this something I need for my driving style or not? Dealerships don't know your driver style. They'll just recommend whatever. You need to decide, and you can always say no. And I always recommend you say no and research before you say yes, spending all this money, then later find out, oh, I didn't need all this stuff because I drive a lot of highway or whatever the case may be. So Brendan says, would you recommend re-gearing 2020 Tacoma Limited? I have a 2-inch lift on 33s, but the truck seems like lower end power. Also will re-gear and void the warranty? It absolutely will void the warranty. As far as re-gearing, I don't have a lot of experience with that with Tacomas, honestly, I'll be honest. You could re-gear the rear end and get better low-end torque, but remember, now going to highway speeds, you're going to have that engine revving up way too high. This is a limitation of re-gearing a rear end. You're either going to pick up the low end at lower speeds, or you lose the higher speeds, or you're going to have a sluggish takeoff and better high-speed RPMs and overall running. So you're really going to have to balance this one out. It's up to you. It will definitely void your warranty in relation to what the gearing is affecting. So anything with transmission, anything with engine destruction or over revving, if you would. Not really if your radio goes out, oh, you have a re-gear. That doesn't, no, it has to be related to or affected directly by the re-gear. If there's a U-joint problem while you're under warranty, yes, they might blame that on the re-gear, stuff like that. But is it gonna avoid other stuff with the warranty? If the water pump starts leaking, that has nothing to do with the re-gear. But that's what it's gonna affect. But you want to consider the other side of the re-gear. It's not just to pick up that low-end power and then you lose your highway drivability. So you're going to want to play that by ear. So Fizz Out says, squeaky spring noise on a 2009 Venza can be reproduced by bouncing the left rear of the car. Goes away immediately by spraying the bottom spring seat with silicone, but comes back after a few days. Spring does not appear broken, drives okay. Rubber between spring and seat appears deformed, maybe torn. Back. I would just put a new strut while there, maybe consider a mount. Or if it's not a very loud squeak, I would leave it until something else happens. Then you have to take the whole thing. But unfortunately, you're going to have to take it apart. Yeah, maybe you can try to pull on that seat, the rubber, and try to move it and make it better. But ultimately, just take it apart and fix it. That's the easiest way and the sure way. Gilbert says, I have a 2019 Forerunner with 52,000 miles. What's the best way to change the power steering fluid? So it's very simple. There are multiple ways to do this, but the easiest DIY way, you're going to need some sort of recovery pump, something that sucks out the fluid. Truck is off, pull all the fluid out of the reservoir, fill it back up with fresh fluid, overfill it a little bit, start the truck, put the cap on, or at least a rag on top of or a towel or something on top of the reservoir. Turn your wheel left to right, 5-6 times just to kind of circulate the fluid. Shut off the truck, pull the fluid out again, put new fluid, and just keep repeating this until you turn the steering wheel left, right, the fluid remains clean in the reservoir. So now you've recirculated all the fluid into the reservoir, in the system, and now your fluid is clean. That's the easiest way to do it. Safe as some people will take the line off and do kind of like a flush dealio. I'd rather you don't take lines off, because then the clamps need to be replaced. And now you moved things, you could have leaks. Just take it out of the reservoir. You can, even if you don't want to get any suction, you could just get a little turkey baster and just pull the fluid. It'll take a longer time, but if you want to keep it on the cheap side without investing in tools. And generally, 50,000, 5 years is when you will start seeing that fluid dirty a little bit, but don't be in a rush. This is not something that you really need to be doing at a specific interval. So Jason says, how long does a CVT transmission last in a Toyota Camry hybrid? Honestly, a very long time. These things are they keep getting better and better. And the Camrys always, other than the first generation, there was a few ones that had issues, but they've been holding up really well. As long as you change the fluid, and the fluid is a little bit more forgiving than a standard automatic transmission, but don't let it run low. Of course, don't do crazy towing that's not allowed with the car. They really will last a lifetime. They'll last 300,000-400,000 miles. Actually, I just had although it's a Prius, but it's a similar design transmission with 400,000 miles. The engine has problems, but the transmission is perfectly fine. And the guy actually bought the engine. He wants to do it. He wants to keep driving the thing. It's a 2015 Prius. So yeah, the transmissions are very reliable. So Jerwin Tabor says, tips on keeping 2021 RAV4 Prime engine running without EV kicking in so I can check for filter tightness and leaks. Tried old setting, nothing works. Maintenance mode. The Primes still have maintenance mode. Well, it'll force the engine on. It'll keep it on continuously. So you're going to turn the key on by pressing the start button twice without your foot on the brake pedal. You're going to push the gas pedal all the way to the floor twice, and then press the brake pedal, hold it, shift into neutral, let go of the brake, pump the gas pedal twice. You're going to want your parking brake applied. Then brake again, put it in park, push the gas pedal twice, and then push the brake, start the car, and you'll be in maintenance mode. It'll display something on the screen, and life is good. The engine will run continuously. Please do not drive the car in this mode. This is just for diagnosis and having the engine run. You do not want to drive it in this mode. And life is good. The engine will run as long as you need it to, but just like a normal gasoline car. And when you want to cancel that, just shut off the car. That's it. It's back to normal. So the cybersecurity guy says, how do you run the Prius Prime air conditioning when charging the EV battery on 120? Is it 110? It is 110 degrees in my garage here in Florida. I need to cool down the battery. So when you set the charging schedule or you plug in your charger, there's actually a message that's going to pop up on the screen. It's going to tell you, do you want to use the air conditioning? And you got to hit yes. And unfortunately, you got to do that every single time. You can't just set it in automatic to use the AC. But that's how it'll actually prompt you. If you, either when you shut off the car, if you have charging schedule set, or when you plug it in, it'll ask you for that. So we want to look for that message on the MID. Oh my God, multi-information display. I call it MID. That's the abbreviation for it. So Love 2000 says, is there a way to turn off the fake engine noise coming from the speakers in the 2020 Avalon? That has been asked before, and unfortunately, there's no direct way to do it. It'd have to be some aftermarket way to go in and change the program. But as far as OEM, I'm not aware of a way to do it. I'd have to do some digging. There might be a customization to turn it off, but I don't recall seeing that. I'd have to look into that one, but I don't think there is. Nelson Rodriguez says, I have a 2003 Toyota Sienna. What kind of transmission fluid should I use? And could I use any other brand? Personally, I'd use OEM. If I'm not mistaken, that one takes Type 4, so that's the older stuff. The older stuff are a lot more forgiving. You could use a lot of stuff that are compatible with it. Personally, I'd still use the original stuff, especially the Type 4 is pretty cheap, and you can actually find it for the same price as aftermarket. So why go aftermarket if you can buy the original for the same price? But that's just me. It's up to you. Okay, let's see where we're at. So GD says 2012 Toyota Tundra Crew Cab Texas Edition at 200,000 miles. Before I continue, I love that Texas Edition. Recently, the horn has stopped working both on steering wheel and key fob. Is this typical? Is there any known problem area I should check? So there is no known problem with these, but a horn can go at any time. It's a simple diagnosis. Open the hood, push the horn button, and listen for a small click. That's a relay. You know at least that part is working, and then go at the horns themselves. Are they getting power? Is there good ground? Has there been body work? Sometimes that core where the horn is grounded through the body of the horn, sometimes body shops will paint underneath it, and now it doesn't get ground. So check power, check ground, apply power, apply ground to the horn. Maybe it's just a bad horn, although there's two of them, so that's unlikely that both of them would go out. but a more likely scenario is they both have a bad ground. There's a fuse, there's a relay. You got to do some simple electrical diagnosis. But as far as common stuff that I'll tell you immediately, yep, that's it. Not really, no. But the loss of ground is common across all Toyotas because of the way the horn is wired. So Lala G, thank you so much for joining the chat. Lala G is one of the OG subscribers. Gustavo Espinosa, greetings from Peru. I am very happy with my 98 Camry V6 and also with my 2012 Camry V6. Those are nice cars, especially that 98 Camry. I don't know how things are in Peru weather-wise, but if that has no rust, that's one of the best cars they made. Patrice Lam says, does the 2020 Corolla non-hybrid use AGM batteries or regular batteries? So most likely the regular ones are always going to use just the regular lead acid battery, nothing special about it. Even the hybrid, I'm trying to remember here, the Corolla does not have the battery in the back. It should have it in the front, just like a Prius. The ones that don't have a battery inside will not have an AGM or a sealed battery. They actually might use just a regular lead acid battery, but your non-hybrid Corolla will use a regular lead acid battery, not an AGM. So Rashim says, hope all is well. What year Highlander can last 300,000 miles? Looking at buying one, keep it for 30 years. Thanks. So that's kind of an open-ended question, and I'll be honest, it's going to depend on you, how you maintain this car. If you want a Highlander to last 300,000 miles, buy it new, take care of it from day one. That's as simple as that. You're not going to be chasing after previous owner neglect, all that stuff. You're just going to start taking care of it from day one as if you are going to keep it for 300,000 miles, beginning with brake and oil change, 5,000-mile oil changes, even 3,000-mile oil changes if you really want to push it, changing a transmission fluid on time. This at the beginning of the first 10 years of the life of the car, doing this will pay you off at the later 10 years of the life of the car. Most people will say, I don't care. I've been driving 200,000 miles in less than 10 years and I have no problems and I neglected all the maintenance. But you sold the car. Keeping it that next 10 years, that reliable Toyota will become an unreliable mess because the previous owner did the bare minimum or didn't do anything. Just oil changes, overdue all the time, no transmission, no coolant, no nothing else. You take care of the car, I'll take care of you. And Toyotas are well engineered. They'll have their issues, of course. It's a machine. But if you take care of them, they're not going to be ridiculous issues at a very young age. So Xavier, how would I increase brake pressure on the first generation Sequoias? So I don't know what the question is, because you should have good pressure on the first generation Sequoia. There was nothing crazy about their brakes. However, they were notorious for the ABS causing a soft pedal or low pressure. Maybe I'm trying to understand your question. Look into the ABS actuator. Some of them had an issue where you'd have a soft pedal because of an ABS actuator or the ABS unit in general. So Daniel says, thoughts on the lithium-ion batteries? Is it good if you live in an area with snow? So lithium-ion batteries are good in general. They really don't have the track record that nickel metal hydride do. But I trust Toyota when they put lithium ions in their cars. I trust that they have tested them and they did their due diligence before throwing them on. Generally, batteries will do better in cold than in hot. So in hot, you're going to want to really stay on top of that cooling system. In cold weather, the only thing you do not want to do is leave the car parked for a month, 2, 3 in sub-zero temperature and super cold. That's not good for them. But if you're using this car normally daily, you leave it here and there for 4 or 5 days up to a week, just like everybody else. You go on vacation or something, that's okay. But leave it parked for 3 months outside, covered in snow, year over year, that's not good for them. So Saturn, sorry if I misread that. What about the 2G RFKS engine and their bad valve guide problem? That's a very good question. So the bad valve guide problem, it was actually a scary problem when the 2G RFKS first came up. And if you have one of those, please don't freak out what I'm about to say. It's a serious manufacturing problem. There was a problem with the valve guides. They were coming off. They were just causing all kinds of issues. That was a manufacturing problem. It affected a very small number of engines. We've seen, if I'm trying to remember if it was Tacoma, potentially Tacoma, definitely Highlander, definitely Sienna that had these issues. Didn't really see much Camrys. I haven't seen it personally, a Camry. It was a pretty bad problem. I mean, it was a bad start to this engine, but it was a manufacturing problem with the cylinder head, and most of the ones that had the problem had it within the first month or two. We're not talking, oh, it has 60,000 miles. No, not even 2,000 miles. This is a catastrophic problem. You're not gonna have this linger till a later time of the life of the car. But we haven't really seen much after it. The ones that were affected, they were isolated. There were specific bats that was taken care of, most of them under warranty, and that's that. You won't see this problem again. It's not a chronic design problem. It's just a manufacturing one. So, James Carroll, thank you so much for joining, sir. I really appreciate it. So Brent Ramsey says, is it safe to switch drive modes in my prime while driving? For example, normal to power to eco. Also, is it okay to switch from EV only to EV HV while driving? You're absolutely fine. You can switch at any given time. Remember, Toyota always plays safe. Just like when you have the paddle shifters and you try to downshift when you're not supposed to, it won't let you. All of these changes in modes, most of them are software. Even the HV and EV, all it's going to do is it's going to switch the mode, and after a little bit, it's going to start the engine. That's when you switch it to HV mode hybrid. Don't worry about it. You can switch through the modes without any issues. So Bobby Wall, on my Camry, oil changes at 5,000 or 10,000. Bobby, I'll tell you this. And you actually, no, that's another Bobby. I'm sorry. Let's answer this one. So 5,000 if you want to keep the car very long, 10,000 if this is a lease, or you're going to get rid of this car in 5-10 years. Not keep it longer than that, not putting high miles. The thing about the oil changes, and everybody will say, oh, I sent it for oil analysis, and I'm working on a video for oil analysis. That'll open your eyes, and I'm just waiting for the results to come back, and we'll talk about it. So you can go 10,000 if you're driving absolutely all highway, all normal driving, no extreme driving, no extreme cold, no extreme hot, no idling. Remember, most people, I am one of those people. Where do you eat your lunch in your work? I go sit in my car, turn on the air conditioning, and take a small nap. That's engine time. The engine is running at that point. That's counting in your oil change. That's the whole idea. And then if you want to really play it safe, go with a 5,000. If you're absolutely sure that your driving has no cold weather, no extensive idling, none of this, you can go to 10,000. Personally, I wouldn't, but that's up to you. So Esteban Solando Rojas, hi from Costa Rica. Hi to you, sir. Good to have you. Thank you very much for joining. So Bobby Woods, should the trans update on the RAV4 to stop the coast and lurch completely solve the problem? I still have just a little now and then. So, Bobby, it's gonna solve the problem when there is actually one. The 8-speed transmission is a little jerky. That's the best way to put it. But that's not a problem. That is just the way it's too much gears and it's trying to shift through it. And Toyota has always been not the smoothest on their transmissions. They'd rather protect the transmission than make these ultra smooth, super fast shifts that could actually affect the life of the transmission. However, when you get a software update, it should be followed by a memory reset. And this is the biggest misconception even among technicians. When you update the software, people assume, well, the memory got wiped out. It actually didn't. And that's the weird part. And you would think, with common sense, that did happen, but it doesn't. So you still have to do a memory reset. It will actually help the transmission shift better. That's from my experience. But if you still have issues, bring it up. Have them reset the memory and see what happens. So Lala G, I have a 2004 Camry with 325,000 miles. It doesn't pick up speed like it used to. Which year Camry should I get next? So, of course, with age, compression will drop a little bit. Things start wearing out, and that's a lot of miles. I mean, I wouldn't be upset thinking something, this is the worst of it. Like, it's a little bit underpowered. That's normal. From age, engines wear out. That's normal. But as far as which year Camry should I get next, I would, if you want a simple car that has none of the latest and the greatest technology, 2015, 2017 Camry has been the greatest so far with that. If you want the latest and the greatest, that has the latest technology, drives the best, looks better, all this stuff, then go 18 and up. If you really want to push it, 19 and up, they've been doing very well. You got to be careful with maintenance. Those are kind of the next generation where the engines are all high tech and all this stuff, but those are really good. So Carlos Bayardo says, how much oil is needed for the rear differential for the RX 450h, and how often is needed to be changed? What oil is needed? So on your RX 450h, you're probably going to need 3 quarts, maybe 4 for the rear differential. Yeah, that's going to be ATFWS, Toyota transmission fluid. And I would replace it every 60 to 90,000 miles, whichever, somewhere in that range is where the fluid, after 90, it gets really too dark and gritty. Before 60, it's still clean. So anywhere in that range, you're safe to do it, and life is good. Okay. So this is another question, that's a good one. Why are the brakes on the Tundras and Sequoias not as strong as other makes? So they are strong, but at the same time, I understand where you're coming from. This is an old design. Tundras and Sequoias always were behind the pack. They always had old, trusted designs. They were never innovative of their kind, if you would. They always carried other cars' technology. And that's why they're reliable, and that's why people love them. You can upgrade the brakes, but really, if they're healthy, they're adequate for their size. Yes, they warp quicker, the calipers are ancient. The whole design is ancient, honestly, but they're ancient. That why they're not as strong as other makes. They're ancient. Most other trucks, they update them every few years, and they change everything. But the Sequoia and the Tundra, we'll just keep things old school. And that's why people love them for that, because they're old school. So Pocket Task, what causes a misfire to become a multiple misfire in 2006 Corolla with a 2ZZ? So multiple misfires is basically the computer telling you, I can't tell which cylinder is misfired. And it's a very difficult code to diagnose because it is such a minor misfire that the computer could not. Computer looks at the crank sensor and it counts the revolutions and can tell which cylinder is misfire. But unless that misfire is large, it's actually going to see that there's a misfire, but it can't tell which one. It's just going to set multiple random misfire. The thing with the 2006 Corolla is, do you have a lean condition? Intake manifold, super common to leak on these from the gasket, and it does cause misfires, like random misfires, and then they go away. Make sure you look at the data. You need a good scan tool, get the freeze frame. Freeze frame is just a snapshot of what happened, all the computer data, when the code set. That gives you an idea what exactly happened. Did all of a sudden your fuel trim jump up? All of a sudden the car was running very lean, taking in too much air because of that leaking gasket, and then when it warmed up, everything expanded, and that gasket no longer is leaking. See, that's how you got to read into the problem. And a lean misfire is one that could be momentarily until as soon as the engine warms up, it goes away. So it could be the reason for your multiple misfires. Real World Garage, how you doing, sir? Good to see you. So watch your video on the spark plugs. I understand your thoughts on the factory plugs, but as you know my background, I usually shop at Rock Auto and have used NGK. Your thoughts? So I'm with you 100%. Most Toyota spark plugs are Denso. Some of them are NGK, and that has been the case. However, the newer engines, unless you can get the exact same plug from the exact same manufacturer, if I remember correctly on that dynamic force, for those who haven't seen the video, we're talking about the 2.5, 2.0, the dynamic force engine, the latest 4-cylinder from Toyota. I don't recall if it was a Denso. I want to say it was a Denso plug, but unless you're getting exactly the same plug, we've had one that came in with crazy misfires, and it had some random auto light, whatever plug. It was the wrong plug for the car. I don't understand why this car had 25,000 miles, had new plugs, but people sometimes will do strange things. I would, on those engines, on the newer ones with direct injection, get the exact same plug or just go OEM. You'd be surprised that the price is not, these plugs are expensive. Iridium spark plugs are expensive, even aftermarket, compared to their platinum or the old stuff. Iridium is expensive, and that's the way it is. So if you're paying all that money and it's only a $2-3 difference, get the original. There's no question of a doubt that's the right plug. So Dr. Ahmed Jabbar, we have the same name, sir. We're already friends here. I have a RAV4 2019 Middle Eastern version. Where can I find the head unit update? So I don't know how things work in the Middle East, if the dealerships are able to do updates and all that, but unfortunately, it's going to have to be through the dealership. I cannot give you updates. This is protected stuff from Toyota. I could lose my job over it. But in the US, you can go to techinfo.toyota.com, get a subscription, download the software yourself, and install it. It's actually not hard. There's a TSB that walks you through the whole process. But I don't know how things are in the Middle East, what kind of radios you guys have, what versions you need, what updates are allowed. So that you're going to have to take up with your dealership, unfortunately. So Naveen the Machine, is it safe to take a 2020 Camry with panoramic sunroof through an auto car wash? I've heard that the sunroof seal can come apart from that. Honestly, I haven't seen issues with it coming apart from the car wash, but unless, there should be no issues taking it through an automatic car wash, as long as it's not a super abrasive, super old and kind of falling apart car wash, and the sunroof is closed, of course. But there shouldn't be an issue taking it through a good car wash, an automatic one. So George Gisel says, I saw your show on spark plug changing. Unlike both my Prius, one style spark plug change at over 100K, and you said nothing about changing coils. Honestly, if you watch my channel, you'll know that I'm a big advocate for, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. If it's a 4-cylinder, anybody can change a coil on a 4-cylinder. I would not change coils just because you know what? Yes, the coils are old, if the car is 10 years old, has 120,000 miles, whatever the case may be, but you're presuming that this coil is bad. But what if it's good and you get another 10 years out of it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because this is how you start getting yourself into overspending on car maintenance over stuff that is not really needed. If you're doing a V6 and the rear spark plugs are really difficult to get to, and you're worried about the coils, and you're paying somebody a lot of money to replace them, perhaps consider it. But if it's a 4-cylinder, it's super easy. Even if you pay somebody, it's not high labor. I wouldn't want to waste your money, and I implore you not to. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So Hassan Khan says, I have a 2006 Toyota Sienna. When starting up, belt makes noise. I replaced the belt. You're going to need to tighten it. So that Sienna has a manual tensioner where you can kind of tighten it by hand, set the tension by hand. You're going to need to tighten it a little bit more. Perhaps remove one belt. Usually it's either the one in the back for the power steering or the one in the front for the alternator and the compressor. The one in the front is easier. You can just tighten one bolt and it tightens. But the one for the power steering, you kind of have to pull it down and then tighten the bolt. So most mechanics have a hard time setting the tension on that one. That one ends up making noise. Usually if the noise goes away when you start it, turn on the AC. Does it come back? If it does, it might be the one for the alternator and compressor. If it doesn't, it's probably that one in the back for the power steering. That's kind of more difficult to set the tension on. So the com says, I have a 2014 Toyota Avalon, and since I bought it new until now, it always displays check charging system, and I have never had an electric problem. Should I worry? Well, does it say it when the car is running? Because these cars, when you turn the key on and not start them, they're going to say that, and that's normal because it's basically like a battery light. You remember when you older car with a regular battery light, you turn the key on, the battery light comes on until you start it because the alternator is not turning. On these newer cars, especially that generation Highlander, Avalon, it will actually be a message on the screen, not an actual battery light. So when you turn the key on, you basically press the start button twice, it'll say it. And sometimes you press it, and it's just that moment where the engine is starting, it'll actually display it and then go off. That's just the computer being a little slow about taking off that message. if you don't have a charging problem at this point, especially this has been happening since new, if your battery's not dying all the time, I wouldn't worry about it because that's just a thing with the car that it does, but it's not a problem. So Richard R., can you discuss real quick why you highly don't recommend people to buy 2010, 2011 Toyota Camry? It's not that I don't recommend it, but here's the problem with those. That is the first year that we started with the disaster, that is the 10,000-mile oil change. And right now, I know at least 4 people who are close friends that own these, and they burn oil like you would not believe. They come in, I actually remember the last one that came in. It comes in here, she says, every time I make a turn, the car starts making noise. I'm thinking struts, maybe an axle's going bad. She pulls in my driveway. I can hear the engine knocking, ready to blow up when she makes a turn because all the little oil that's left goes to one side, and now the engine runs out of oil momentarily. These things burn oil like you would not believe. However, there are people out there who took care of these cars from day one, didn't scrap that 10,000-mile oil change, actually did it every 3,000 to 5,000. They don't have problems. And they tell me, like, what are you talking about? I don't have a single problem. I have 300,000 miles. Oil changes. It's as simple as that. These 2010, 2011 Camrys were the first ones with the 10,000-mile oil change. And people loved it. And they actually went 15 just because of the celebration of the 10,000-mile oil change. They were the most neglected for some reason. It's very hard to find one in good shape. The V6 is great. The 4-cylinder is a disaster, not because of the car, but because of the owners. I don't know why. Most people, especially the 11, when the 11 came out, they announced the 2012 Camry, and everybody was like, oh, I want to wait for the 12. So the ones that bought the 11s, for some reason, didn't take care of them. I don't get it. It's, you look at 07 to 09s, people love them, even though they burn oil because of an actual problem with the engine that Toyota took care of later. They took care of them much better than 2010 and 11. It is, in my opinion, professionally, I see those every single day. It is so hard to find one in good shape. Everyone that comes in has no oil, leaks oil everywhere. Power steering is leaking, the struts are falling apart, and people just don't fix them. Nothing. It's not the car's fault. The car has 250,000 miles. People don't take care of them for some reason, which makes it extremely difficult to find one in good condition because people that take care of them, they're actually great cars if you take care of them. And they're probably not going to sell them. You're just going to keep driving them. And that's why you don't really see ones in good shape for sale out there. So Jorge Lopez says, I have a 96 Camry LE V6 3.0, 234,000 miles. What were the pros and cons of that year Camry? Honestly, that's one of the best Camrys ever made. Old school, very old school, and now probably very outdated. However, just like anything else, it's old. Old cars, even the best ones like that Camry, they just start falling away in a way. They start falling apart in a way that you just can't keep up with at some point. Oil leaks were notorious for this engine. It's just continuous oil leaks. At some point, the head gasket is going to go. That's just from age, and that's normal. I wouldn't be upset about it. But the last thing is that really hit those cars hard. And I don't know if you have this issue or not. Rust. I remember the last 96 Camry that I saw. I couldn't even lift up in the air. Put the lift on it, started lifting. The lift just went in the body from rust. They rust really bad. Brake lines, subframe, the whole like structural body, not the little cosmetic stuff outside, like the actual frame of the car, the unibody. It rots. Now you can't even lift it. Other than that, they're good cars, but expect them to start falling apart. They're old. And that's just, even the best car made, they'll fall apart at some point, and that's a little too old there. We're hoping that's, speaking of the too old, we're hoping that the cars that are bought today will last as much as that 96 Camry if we start taking care of them from now. So no scoff, Toyota provides TRD parts as enhancement, but causes problems. I have a negative camber, cause of lowering springs, TRD cambers are not adjustable. I put back all the OEM, but I take it for wheel alignment, cannot be adjusted. So you can adjust camber to a certain limit. When you start putting TRD stuff, they should remain within OEM. That's what they're designed for. But sometimes you need to make slight adjustments to the camber, especially in the front. The rear doesn't have much adjustment, and you really need a good shop to know how to handle the camber and get it back in spec. And you should be able to do that with the TRD because it did not go an extreme lowering where you can't really bring it in spec because it's way too much. But that I would not accept as, well, that's the way it is. No, it's a TRD part. You're buying it from the dealership. The alignment should be perfect. If it's not, that's a defective spring and a defective design, and you need to take it back, put back your stuff, because it is not your fault that their design is defective. That's my opinion. However, the TRD stuff's been good generally, but I wouldn't be surprised if you find one that is just flat out bad from the box. Things happen. I would talk to the dealership that installed it. If you're installing it yourself, put it back in the box, send it back. It's something is messed up with that kit. It should not set your camber way out. Maybe it'll be a tiny bit where you can bring it back easily with the adjustment, but not way out. Way out is not, something is wrong. So Supa Dupa says, just change O2 air fuel ratio sensor on 04 Camry upstream. It scoots to acceleration. Does it need time to calibrate, or is it the wrong sensor? The sensor will not cause immediate drivability issue. It's going to be more emissions and more kind of power and performance, but not, it won't have like a low like lagging or just not having enough power to drive. It's possible it's a wrong sensor if you went aftermarket, but does it have codes? You kind of want to look at the whole picture in general, not just, I replaced the sensor and did it have this problem before? Why were you replacing the sensor? If you did not have this problem before, now you do, then potentially you have an incorrect sensor that's causing some kind of issue with the computer. If you were trying to fix this issue, then an AF sensor is not really going to immediately cause your kind of lack of power that is very noticeable. I would look at other stuff. If you suspect something with exhaust clogged cat from oil burning, general health of the engine, compression, is everything okay? You know, that's where I start to chase after. And there's a point where older car, you might have just that lack of performance is normal because of age. So I'm seeing here you wrote the old sensor had a 2238 code and drove smoothly. You have a bad sensor in this case, because 2238 is definitely an AF sensor that's upstream. You replace the right one. If you have new issues after that, I would replace the sensor with the original. I know they're expensive, but get the original, or at least get a Denso. And if it is a Denso that you got, could be counterfeit, who knows? I would get an original and be done with it. But in the meantime, here's what I would do before you jump in and start replacing this. Disconnect it. See what happens. The car will run, but see if the initial issue goes away. That's what I would do. So, Richard, I know burning oil is a hot topic, but I was confused why you don't recommend people buy 2010 and 11, but don't give the same recommendation for a 2012 Camry. Is it not the same engine? So that's a very good question. 2012 is exactly the same engine as the 2011. However, for some, again, we go back to the mysteries of people and how they maintain their car. 2012 Camry was a very successful car. I am being a little bit biased because I love that model because I had one. But in all honesty, 2007, 2011 Camry in general, the whole generation, did not impress people too much. It was a great car, in my opinion, but it had so many problems attached to it. One of them is the oil burning in the previous ones, in the early ones, and then the other ones continued the same with the new engine. And coming from the 2002 to 2006 legend of a Camry that felt like a small tank, they kind of felt like they've dropped in quality. The way they drove was different, didn't feel like a tank. But then when we went to the 12s, people loved the way they looked. They were a major improvement. They had Bluetooth stuff. They had so many technology that was, well, in today, it's like old school technology. But in 2012, it was like the latest and the greatest. People love those cars. So when people love their cars, they take care of them. That's just the way things work. However, don't think I don't see 2012 Camrys left and right that burn oil, that unbelievable, just like the 2010 and 11. Same thing, goes back to the same thing. You don't take care of that engine. That 2ARFE is a great engine, but don't take care of it with oil changes and keep going overdue. It's going to start burning oil like you would not believe, something unbelievable. Not because of a design issue, but because you're not taking care of it. It's as simple as that. But 2012 to 14, there was a change in that engine. There's not exact data, but from what we're observing, right around between 12 and 13 model year, there was a change. Right around the time the 2013 RAV4 came about, toward the end of 2012, the engine changed. There was an internal change, updated few things. It seemed to be better, although now we're starting to see we're starting to see 2013 RAV4s that were neglected burn oil. So be careful. The moral of the story is you change your oil on time. You're going to buy a used car. Make sure it has a good service history. Otherwise, really, your guess is as good as mine on if this thing's going to start burning oil or not. So be careful, folks. This is not a 96 Camry where you can neglect it and it'll take the abuse and be fine. No, the new cars, they really need their maintenance more. So Supa Dupa, you're getting back to me here. I only use Denso. And many said that works for my car. Any suggestion of what ID? Honestly, I'd have to look up the part number. I don't have it right off the top of my head. Leave a comment after we're done, and I'll try to help you. Otherwise, go to parts.toyota.com, put your VIN number, find the EF sensor, and that's the part number you want to go off of. So in focus photography, put a TRD lift in my 21 Tacoma, needle bearings vibration right after lift. I have an ECGS bushing, will fix it, but the dealer won't replace the bushing under warranty. They want $700 to install. Unfortunately, the lift, if it's a TRD lift from the dealership and there's a needle bearing failure, that should be warranted through the dealership if the kit was installed at a dealership. See, this is where the problems start. The TRD parts, they are approved OEM accessories, but they're considered aftermarket unless they're installed by a factory, whatever technician or whatever you want to call it, basically the dealership. That's when your warranty comes in. But if you buy it, install it somewhere else, they have the ability to just say, you're on your own. The part's not defective itself. It's just, So in this case, I don't know if you had the dealership install it or you installed it elsewhere or installed it yourself. Vibration after the lift is a problem. And yes, the needle bearing will have issues. And I would look at your axle angle. Some of these lifts, and I'm surprised actually a TRD lift would do that, but the axle angle makes a huge difference because basically when you look at these trucks, when they're sitting like the OEM height, the axles, so the front axles they're not drooping down, they're actually drooping up a little bit. So they're perfectly flat. When you drive, they go up and down. That axle is always straight. So that needle bearing is engaged in the center, not pushing down or pushing up. But when you lift the truck and the diff is still the same place, you're actually going to start kind of hanging from that bearing because now your axle is all the way down and you're hanging from that bearing, putting the load on one side of that bearing. And these needle bearings, they're not designed really to be side loaded like that. And they just fail and fail and fail. And you first start with the vibration and then they just fail and start making noise. The idea, the bushing, and I don't know if that's the same bushing that's designed for this kit. Usually a TRD kit should consider the axle angles, and we're starting to see this more and more now with Forerunners. The bushing, if the bushing what you mean, I'm not sure what the ECGS bushing is, but if the bushing that you mean is the one that drops the front of the differential, then yes, it could solve this issue by when you lower the front of the differential, you actually turn it a little bit and push it down a little bit. Sometimes that is just enough to unload that needle bearing, and now you're not pushing down on it. So unfortunately, this one, I'm going to need to know if you installed it yourself, you had a dealer install it. If I don't get to your answer in this live stream, please leave a comment and I'll be more than happy to help further. Okay. So, Jeremy C, best way to monitor trans temperature in 2018 Forerunner SR5. So the best way is, yeah, sure, you can get a temperature gauge and all this whole mess. Find yourself one of those small scan gauges. I think scan gauge is one of them. There's many like that. It's just a small OBD2 scan tool that can show you data. Find one of those, stick it on the dash, and then you have actually more than just transmission fluid temperature without really being invasive, without running new wires and a gauge and this whole mess. You can get coolant temperature, all kinds of other data that you might find useful, and really get it from the right source, the temperature sensor inside the transmission, and it just hooks up to your OBD2 connector. You can remove it at any moment, and it's not in your way or anything. So, Captain Tim, when will Toyota lots be filled with inventory? I was waiting for someone to ask that. You want the good news or the bad news? The good news is one day they will be filled, hopefully. The bad news is things are going to get worse. And I was contemplating making a video about this to give you a heads up. You think Toyota lots inventory is the biggest problem, but the problem already started with other stuff, parts, oil. We're running out of stock on everything. For example, if you own a Sienna, good luck finding brake rotors OEM. And even aftermarket now is becoming rare because just for the same reason they can't make cars, the same reason they can't make parts, now oil is becoming an issue. Before we used to hear parts of the world are not getting 0W16. Well, guess what? We're running on fumes of 0W16 and even 0W20. There's no more of that. And it's just a matter of time before all the oils run out if we don't start catching up again. And expect this problem to last till the end of the year, potentially into next year. Unfortunately, that's just out of the manufacturer. And trust me, Toyota is ahead in this. They're a lot better than others. Some of the others have a lot more issues and nobody's talking about. Everybody's worried about what's the next hot thing from Tesla coming out. We have a problem in the automotive business, not just lack of cars and shooting up used cars prices, is parts. We're running out of parts. Do me a favor, please, and this is the reason I delayed that video. I'm going to say it here. At this time, I'm looking, there's 255 people that I will hold accountable for this. Please do not impulse buy parts. Don't do that, because then you contribute to the problem. You need an oil change for your car? Buy parts for an oil change. You need brakes? Buy parts for the brakes. But if you don't go buying parts and then contribute to the problem. And now, 6 months from now, we're still in this problem. So thought I'd give you a heads up. But as far as inventories, we're hoping from the internal hearsay stuff that I hear, hopefully toward the end of the year, we should be getting better. Not 100% better, but getting better. I still see new cars pulling up in the dealership, by the way. You still order cars. They'll take time. Please don't overpay for a car. No matter how great it is, it's not worth it. Any dealership that wants to charge over MSRP is blacklisted in my name. In my book. Not in my name. My name means nothing. In my book, I would not do business with them because that's unethical, flat out. The MSRP is the MSRP. You either sell it at MSRP or less, or just sell it at MSRP. That's fine. But don't be overcharging for a car because that's not right. It's not the buyer's fault that we're in this situation with the shortages. So Tim Burton says, Forerunner versus 2021 Venza. Will the new Venza be as reliable as the last and last as long as my 2019 Forerunner? I'm looking to get at least 250,000 reliable miles for 15 years. MPG is quite attractive on the Venza. So we go back to the same thing. Maintenance. If you're going to take care of this thing, the Venza is a lot less forgiving with maintenance than the Forerunner. You can actually really neglect the maintenance on the Forerunner and they'll pull through. They'll be okay. But on the Venza, you got to be on top of that maintenance. And it'll have no problem at that point lasting to 150,000 miles, going 10, 15 years. Should be no issue, but maintenance is key. That the Venza is a whole different generation of car than the Forerunner. Forerunner is old school. It's basically welcome to 2009 or in reality 2003. It's the same technology, but the Venza, welcome to 2018. Things got real serious in 2018 for Toyota. So yes, they're complicated, but they're actually reliable. They're well made. They're nowhere near as technologically advanced as some of the other manufacturers because they just invent something day two. Let's send it to the people and have them try it out for us. Toyota doesn't do that. So it's not the latest and the greatest in the automotive business, but in Toyota land, it is. Take care of it. It'll take care of you. I wouldn't hesitate. It's the Venza is a really nice car, and it's picking up traction right now, and I'm happy because it's actually a very nice car to drive, to own, except the start button location. I really don't like that one. That's about the only thing I really don't like about them. It's just nothing. It's not major. So David Sherman says, purchased my 2014 Sienna new out of state and drove a couple 100 miles home on freeway. Ever since new, transmission have hunted for proper gear. After slowing down 25, 35 miles an hour, could AT reset help? It definitely could. And the other thing is change or check the transmission fluid level. You would not believe how many we have seen, sorry Toyota, but the truth be said, that are not the correct level from the factory. That's just the way it is. Check the fluid level, replace it if it's at miles, if it has 60,000 miles already. You didn't include the miles. Change the fluid, set the level, and reset the memory. That might actually fix your issues. A lot of people have these issues with the 6-speed. Now that we have the 8-speed, everybody's like, oh, the 6-speed is the best. But it actually did have similar problems where people forgot about them. So Jim D, 2020 Highlander Limited, 3.5, 27K. Any transmission issues? I'm getting a shudder when accelerating to 25 in normal mode, pulling a trailer. So far, I don't have any issues on the transmission for a 2020 Highlander. However, the transmission is still odd shifting and odd driving, but a shudder should not be one of those characteristics of the transmission. Do bring it to the dealership's attention. You're still within warranty. Try to replicate the same conditions. Does it do that without pulling a trailer? If it does, bring it up. If it doesn't, call them, explain to them the situation. They might want to drive it with the trailer hooked up. And the trailer has to be within the towing capacity of that car. Otherwise, you might be actually causing damage by pulling overweight on the transmission. That's the only thing I would like to bring to your attention. So the cybersecurity guy says, can the onboard traction battery charger backseat vent be blocked when driving and not charging the Prius Prime battery? So on the Prius Prime, yes, they can be blocked because there is no DC-DC converter there. It's just a charger that is not really doing anything when you're driving. So they can be blocked. It's not ideal because when you start blocking it, and that's you make that a habit, you could easily forget it, and then we have serious problems because that charger gets pretty hot when it's charging. That's why it has a cooling system, not exactly a fan, a filter and all that, but it has a fan, and that's its intake. Best thing to do is not to block it, but you could if you have to when you're driving, but when charging, absolutely not. Okay, folks, so we're getting toward the end of the live stream. However, this time I'm not going to take 3 questions. I'm going to take 5 more questions. I'm just going to pick up the next question now, and then we'll just go run them across the board. So Run That RC says, 2010 Forerunner SR5, when it gets hot out and I sit for a little at a drive-through, the temperature does not move, but the 4-wheel drive blinks and the ABS and traction control lights are on. I can't figure it out. So that's an interesting issue. And 2010 is a lot better than the previous one with this, but you're going to want to check for codes, for ABS codes, as it has this issue. Unfortunately, the Forerunner is ancient, and it doesn't store code. Sometimes you get an ABS code, you cycle the key, the code erases itself. It doesn't set as history. That's just how they are. And if you're working with a dealership on this one, you're going to want to replicate that same condition. When the lights come on, go to the dealership and have them check the codes, or do that at the dealership, where replicate those conditions where it's really hot out. You sit at a light, at a drive-through, just sit there and drive, or whatever the case may be, and have them check it right away. It could be nothing, but you also want to know what's going on there. The only other thing, oh no, but sorry, never mind. You said the four-wheel drive light blinking, not the traction light blinking, so never mind. So let's take kind of go across to get everybody at least one question answered. So let's take this one. So Al says, I recently bought a salvaged 2018 Prius and had to do alignments, but then after that, a message appeared on my dashboard, pre-collision system malfunction. I don't have warranty since it's salvage. Well, that is kind of a general question. Why was it salvaged? And it's probably, I'm taking from you having to do alignments, either hit in the back or the front or somewhere. You're going to want to calibrate all these systems, specifically the sensor, the radar sensor behind the emblem. It's typical that they need an alignment and maybe an adjustment in the whole bracket. Make sure that that sensor is actually corrected and installed properly. No zip ties, no bend brackets that got, everything needs to be replaced, unfortunately. And last, it needs calibration. And the calibration is not extremely difficult, not extremely expensive, but it needs to be done right. Some aftermarket companies will do it, dealerships will do it. So unfortunately, that one you're going to have to pay for it to get it done if you don't have the equipment. But the bracket, don't even waste your time and money going to the dealership to do this calibration. If your bracket is not 100% correct, especially after body repair, I've seen all kinds of stuff, folks. Unfortunately, I've seen zip ties on the radar sensor that is supposed to be accurate to a millimeter. That's just some body shops are like that. With salvage cars, I've seen some salvage cars come in where the sensor is missing. It's not even there. So make sure it's there. Make sure it's installed properly. No bent brackets. Everything's corrected and installed properly. Make sure, and this is another mistake I see, the emblem, the Toyota emblem in the front grille, that it is an actual radar sensor emblem. I've seen people where, especially when talking about salvage cars, folks, salvage cars, you're not going to buy all new parts. I understand that, to keep your costs down. But if you go buy an emblem from from another model that just fits, okay, great. But it's not the radar sensor one where it has like that clear, you can't, there's no texture to it, it's flat. You buy one with a texture, well, you're blocking the radar sensor, and that could be your issue. So the sensor is going to need calibration, and that should take care of your issues. All right. So that's question number 2. Let's take question number 3. So Renee Lopez, that's a good question. 2017 Highlander, any recent issues at your shop that you are seeing as a trend? Oh, yes. Sorry to say that, but the transmissions have calmed down significantly. I have not seen a transmission, an 8-speed transmission out of a Highlander or a Sienna. Oh, it's been a while. So that's good. That's very good. However, we're starting to see issues with thermostats failing left and right. Either a car comes in with no heat, that was especially in the winter, weak heat, no heat, not good heat, or it has a check engine light and it ends up being just a thermostat, just classic thermostat code. It's a big behemoth thermostat that's not really difficult to change, but that's very common with these. And God help me, I'm trying to remember, there was another thing I wanted to talk about for the 17 Highlanders. It escaped my mind. If I remember, I will bring it back up. But the thermostat one is the big one. Oh, you get a code, and this is actually affects more than 17, more like 17 to 19, especially the ones with the fuel pump recall that we've got burned by. The purge valve, the evap purge valve, so it'll have multiple codes for misfires, for lean codes, it'll have fuel pump codes, fuel pressure codes, and it's just that purge valve that is stuck. Very simple diagnosis, take the hose off of it. With the valve off, you should not get any vacuum on the other side, and if you are, that's a bad valve. That was one that kind of came as a herd. Now we're starting to see less and less, but that was very common on these. And for some reason, the valves, even across other models too, they had a bad batch. And they really haven't given us any information of specific which years, which VIN numbers or whatever. But that was one that popped up. But the thermostat one is the #1 issue right now with the 17 Highlander, and a few water pumps and front timing covers here and there. Timing covers a lot less. Water pumps are starting to show up, but thermostats are a lot. A lot. That's the latest thing. So this question doesn't count. We still have two more questions. R. Cavazo says 2018 Tacoma with 26,000 miles, TSS pre-collision sensor error happens during rain only. Is this covered under warranty? So it could be, and this is the older ones. Did you get the recall done? There was a recall on these for water getting inside the sensor. You're going to want to make sure that that recall was done and done right, because that's sort of the exact conditions that you're describing. You get water in the sensor and it affects the operation in the system. As far as warranty, it's 3 years, 36,000 miles. You might be out of warranty on this one by time, not by miles. You're going to have to call your dealership and inquire. They'll check for codes. And that system does store history codes so they can know actually what happened, even if it's not happening at the moment. So let's take two more questions here, folks. So let's see here. So here's an interesting question. So Dan Roy says, why is the steering of Toyotas feel numb? Too much power assist compared to most performance cars. I love your question, and it's a valid one. And it's a very simple answer. Who drives Toyotas? And does anybody go and buy a simple Corolla and expect it to behave like, I don't know, a BMW M5? Nobody does. People buy Toyotas not because they're performance cars, not because even though some of them do well, not because they are very fast and very aggressive. They buy them because they are dependable, reliable, and economical. Not just economical to buy, but economical to own. So Toyota's design philosophy is not going to be after, let's compromise suspension quality, reliability for better handling. And the casing point is, and I've owned many German cars and actually love Mercedes-Benz, and people know that. There's no secret. That's another manufacturer that I love. Their suspension drives perfect, beautiful, but it also perfectly designed to fail. That's just the way it is. That's the limitation. Overcomplication equals more parts equal more stuff that are going to go south, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Toyota takes an approach of, we're going to make it okay, but reliable. Drives okay, but reliable, and they've come a long way. If you go drive a, I don't know, 2004 Camry, for example, compare the steering feeling of that to a 2021 Camry, they've come a very long way of keeping things reliable, but making them feel better. And that's what Toyota is heading towards slowly. Again, Toyota is very slow with their development because they want to make sure everything is perfect. So that's the reliability. Really, you do not want to compromise reliability. You look at others. Hondas drive much better than Toyotas, feeling-wise and just general driving-wise. But they also fall apart suspension-wise. Control arms, ball joints, left and right, and very early. And that's just the way it is. Cars that handle better, they have suspensions that are more reliability compromised because everything is to the limit. And that's the reason why. It's very simple. Toyota Supra, on the other hand, that handles great, but you wait for the suspension in that when the bushings start falling left and right. That's just normal. That's the way a cookie crumbles there. This question doesn't count, and after this one, we're going to take the last question. Miss Word Office says, Sienna 2021 used for disabled patients, idling for prolonged time to keep cabin warm for at least 4 or 5 hours every day. Any tips how to keep it long-term? Earlier oil change. You absolutely want to consider earlier oil change in your case because you have extensive idling. So absolutely no longer than 5,000 miles or 6 months. That is in your maintenance guide. You should definitely consider earlier oil change. Definitely consider the severe or special condition use maintenance schedule. So everything is going to happen earlier. Transmission fluid needs to happen at 60,000 miles. That's the way to keep this, because if you go, imagine if you go 10,000 miles with that long extended idling every single day, it'll be similar if you're going double the miles. Just because you're not registering miles, the engine is still running on, off, on, off. This is a hybrid, so it's going to be on, off. So definitely consider 5,000 miles, 6 months. That's the first thing you should consider. All right, folks. So let's take the very last question, and the last question is always as how we do things. The last question is the last question, because the last is always first. So in this case, the last question is going to be JJ. 2009 Camry, slight whirring noise wherever going 50 to 60 miles coming from the back right tire. Don't think it's affect handling, and sometimes makes more noise than other times. Two things you need to look at: wheel bearing and tires. First thing you want to do in this case, rotate the tires front to back. And while you have the tires in your hand, take your hand, rub it against the edge of the tire. Do you feel roughness in one direction versus the other? If you do, that's called choppy tires. That could happen because the tire is bad quality or it's never been rotated, always the same suspension load on it, makes it kind of like have this surface, and that's going to make a lot of noise when you drive. Second thing is, if all the tires are fine and you rotate them, there's still exactly the same noise. You driving, start swinging left and right safely in a safe environment. If you hear the noise come and go and kind of change pitch, you have a wheel bearing problem, unlikely one of the backs. The best way to check those: lift the car up, put your hand on the spring, on the coil spring where it sits on top of the strut, and then spin the tire left side and the right side. You're going to feel one of them is rougher. On the spring, you'll feel that vibration. When you turn the tire, you're going to feel it a lot rougher than the other side. That's the first wheel bearing you're going to start with. Those are the two things that would cause a whirring noise when you go at those speeds. Folks, with that, I want to thank you very much for watching today's live stream. Tomorrow, look for a special release video, if you would, that you guys might enjoy. I hope you do. We're going to celebrate the 100,000 subscriber milestone, which I would like from now to say thank you very much for supporting this channel, for keeping us going, and here's to many years to come and many milestones for us to celebrate as a family. Folks, if you like this live stream, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you don't follow me on Instagram and you have an Instagram, please consider following me on Instagram. You'll see some sneak peeks here and there and some stuff from the shop that you won't see in a video format yet. We have a few videos coming up. There's one more DIY video and then one more kind of big ticket video that you're going to see with some interesting information. And I'm still working on getting a Highlander. Believe it or not, I'm also affected by getting cars and using them to filming here. I'm getting a 2021 Highlander pretty soon here. We'll start making some videos on that. The many have been very patiently waiting for it, and I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for watching the live stream. Thank you for watching the channel, and we'll see you in the next video. And until that, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you guys have a wonderful Saturday evening.